Christmas lights glittered around the dining room, their reflections dancing across the crystal glasses and silver cutlery. My wife, Linda, fussed over the turkey, humming the same carol she did every year. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. But peace doesn't last long in this house. I looked at the long oak table, my table, the one I'd bought 30 years ago when this home was nothing but a dream and 2 paychecks away from foreclosure. Every chair at that table had a memory, especially the one at the head. That chair was mine. When everyone finally gathered, my son Ethan, his wife Clara, my daughter Rachel, and a few distant relatives, I felt that small flicker of warmth, the kind that only family can give. Then it happened. As I approached my seat, Ethan stepped in front of me. "Dad, can you take the other chair tonight?" he said casually, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I frowned. "What do you mean? That's my seat." He glanced over his shoulder at his father-in-law, Harold, a man I barely tolerated, smug, retired, and always ready to remind people of how successful his own family was. "This seat's for my Phil," Ethan said. "It's just respectful." The room went silent. Linda froze mid-step. Rachel's smile faltered. Respectful? I stared at my son, my flesh, my blood, the man I raised, fed, clothed, and educated. And now, in front of everyone, he told me to move. I laughed softly. Respectful? To make your father stand while another man sits at his table? Dad, please, don't make this awkward, Ethan murmured, his jaw tightening. For a moment, I wanted to fight. I wanted to shout, to remind him whose name was on the deed to this house. But instead I stepped aside. I sat at the far end beside the window, the seat that used to belong to our old dog. Everyone acted like nothing happened. Harold grinned, slicing into the turkey as if he'd claimed a throne. Ethan poured him wine. Clara kept her eyes low. But my appetite was gone. My hands trembled. My heart burned. That night, while everyone laughed and clinked glasses, I silently watched the family I built crumble before me. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. Call it anger. Call it realization. Whatever it was, it whispered one thing. They don't see you as the father anymore. When I went to bed, I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. And I promised myself something. If my own blood could humiliate me in my house, then I'd show them what happens when a father stops forgiving. As I turned off the bedside lamp, I noticed something strange. My will papers were missing from the drawer. Someone had already begun their betrayal. If you were in my place, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe if you're following this story so far. The morning after Christmas, the house looked like a battlefield. Empty glasses, crumpled napkins, and the lingering scent of betrayal. I sat by the fireplace, a mug of black coffee cooling in my hands, and stared at the safe key hanging from the mantel. My will, my life's legacy, had been in that safe for 10 years. I'd planned to update it soon. Maybe leave the lake house to Rachel and a share of the business to Ethan. But now, something gnawed at me. When I opened the drawer last night, the file was gone. Someone had moved it. At first, I thought maybe Linda had done some cleaning, but she swore she hadn't touched it. Her eyes looked worried when I told her. "Maybe you misplaced it," she said softly, trying to soothe me. "No," I replied. "It was there. Someone took it." Ethan came downstairs late, reeking of expensive cologne, pretending like nothing had happened. "Merry day after Christmas, Dad," he said, forcing a smile. I stared at him over the rim of my mug. "Did you go into my study last night?" He blinked. "Your study? No, why would I?" Because my will is missing. For the first time, his composure cracked, just slightly. Your what? My will, Ethan. I leaned forward. The one that decides what happens when I'm gone. He laughed nervously. Dad, maybe you just misplaced it. You've been forgetful lately. Forgetful. That word cut deeper than he realized. I'd run a successful business for 40 years. I handled contracts, finances, and people. But now, my son, my own flesh and blood, was gaslighting me in my own home. That's when I knew it wasn't about a chair anymore. It was about power. Later that afternoon, I called Rachel. My daughter had always been the quiet one, distant since her mother took Ethan's side in everything. She lived in Chicago now, running a small art gallery. When I told her about the missing will, she hesitated. Dad, she said carefully, Clara mentioned something weird last week. She said Ethan's been talking about you retiring soon. He even asked her what she'd do if you left the business to him. My pulse quickened. Left it to him? I hadn't told anyone that yet. I hung up and went back to the safe. My documents, bank statements, and company papers, all rearranged. And there, in place of the missing file, was a single photo. It was me, Ethan, and Linda from a decade ago. Except someone had drawn a red X over my face. I sat there for a long time, staring at it. My throat tightened. This wasn't just a family misunderstanding anymore. This was a message. And I was done being silent. That night I installed hidden cameras in my study. The next morning the footage showed Ethan entering at 2:17 a.m. and Clara waiting by the door whispering, "Did you find it? If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button. Things are about to get darker." The footage haunted me all night. Ethan's voice, cold and sharp. Clara's whispers like poison. "Did you find it?" she asked. "I will," Ethan replied, "before he changes anything." That was enough. Enough to turn love into calculation. The next morning I acted as if nothing had happened. I made pancakes, offered Ethan coffee, even smiled at Clara as she scrolled through her phone. They thought they were playing me. But I'd been playing this game long before they were born. When they left to meet Harold for lunch, I went straight to Ethan's old room. I searched his drawers, his suitcase, even the pockets of his coat. And then I found it. My missing USB drive. It contained scanned copies of my will, property deeds, and bank records. But someone had altered them. In the fake version, the company shares, my entire life's work, were reassigned to Ethan. I couldn't breathe. My son wasn't just planning to take my chair, well, he was planning to take everything. I knew then that this wasn't Ethan's idea alone. Clara had influence. The quiet kind. I remembered how she used to compliment me, laugh at my jokes, until I refused to make her father a business partner. Since then, she'd been distant, manipulative, whispering poison into Ethan's ear. But now they'd underestimated me. I called Rachel again. "Dad, you sound calmer than I expected," she said. "Oh, I am," I told her. "You don't show your anger to snakes before you strike." She hesitated. "What are you planning?" "Just watching," I said softly. "For now." That night, I moved through the house like a ghost. I added a second camera behind a painting, another near the study door. I even placed a small recorder under the dining table, the same one where they took my seat. Days passed, and they began to slip. Ethan's calls became more secretive. Clara started visiting Harold more often. One evening I caught part of their conversation on the recorder. "Your dad's losing it," Clara said. "He won't notice anything," Ethan replied. "By the time he does, it'll be too late." Too late. I stared at my reflection that night and barely recognized the man staring back. Gray eyes, sunken cheeks, but steady. Maybe they thought age made me weak. But time doesn't weaken a man like me. It sharpens him. And if they wanted war, they'd get one. As I reviewed another recording, I froze. Ethan was on the phone with someone I didn't expect. My wife, Linda. She whispered, "He can't know I helped you. If you were betrayed by your own family, would you forgive or destroy? Tell me in the comments." I couldn't sleep. Hearing Linda's voice in that recording, calm, complicit, tore through me like a blade. I replayed it again, just to be sure I wasn't imagining things. Ethan. What if he finds out? Linda. He won't. I'll handle him. Handle me. My wife, the woman I built a life with, was now handling me like some senile old man. At dawn, I found her in the kitchen, humming while making coffee. She looked peaceful. "Did you sleep?" she asked without looking up. I placed the recorder on the counter and pressed play. Her face drained of color. It's not what you think," she stammered. "Then tell me what I think," I said quietly. Tears welled in her eyes. "Ethan just wanted help. He said you were changing the will, that you'd cut him off. I didn't want to lose our son, that's all. So you chose his side." "It's not sides, it's family," she cried. Family. That word had become meaningless in this house. I stared at her trembling hands. Once they used to hold mine in moments of faith and warmth. Now they just reminded me of betrayal. "Do you know what happens when a father is cornered, Linda?" I asked softly. "He stops being a father." She flinched. "What are you going to do?" "Nothing," I lied. "I'll let things unfold naturally." She believed me, because she wanted to. Over the next few days, I watched her. Every call, every whisper, every nervous glance. She'd become their messenger, passing information, keeping me distracted. But I played along. I started acting forgetful, misplacing my phone, leaving documents carelessly on the desk. I wanted them to feel confident, safe, because only then could I crush them completely. And it worked. 2 nights later, Ethan and Clara came by when they thought I was asleep. They snuck into my study again, this time to copy financial data from my computer. I watched from the hallway camera feed as Ethan whispered, "Yeah, once the accounts transfer, he'll have nothing left to fight with." Clara smirked. "Then he'll finally know what it feels like to lose everything." My hand tightened around the chair's edge. Not yet. Not yet. Revenge, I told myself, isn't served hot or cold. It's served precisely. The next morning, Rachel called with news that froze me. "Dad, I think they're trying to declare you mentally unfit to manage your assets." When Rachel told me about the mental incompetence filing, my world stopped spinning for a moment. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was execution. "Dad," she said over the phone, her voice shaking, "I overheard Clara talking to someone from a law firm. They're preparing medical records. Fake ones." My hands clenched around the phone. Fake medical records. My own son wanted the world to think I'd lost my mind. But instead of anger, something colder took over. Clarity. They wanted to make me look unstable. I'd give them a performance they'd never forget. That evening, I invited them all for dinner. Family night, I called it. They hesitated at first, but curiosity got the better of them. As they arrived, I played my part, trembling hands, forgetting names, asking strange questions. Ethan exchanged glances with Clara. Linda tried to hide a nervous smile. I noticed Ethan quietly recording me on his phone. Perfect. "Dad, are you okay?" he asked, sweetly. I blinked. "Oh, yes. I was just wondering where I kept my crown." They exchanged smirks. Let them believe it. Later that night, when everyone went home, I retrieved my own hidden camera footage. Every smirk, every whisper, every cruel grin, all caught in 4K clarity. I sent the files to a trusted lawyer, Mark Feldman, an old friend who owed me more than one favor. "Mark," I said, "when the time comes, you'll know what to do. I want it airtight. Every recording, every timestamp." He chuckled darkly. "You're planning something big, aren't you?" I smiled. "No, I'm just planning to let the truth speak." Over the next few days, Ethan grew confident. He brought in a family doctor, someone he clearly paid off. The man asked me questions like, "Do you remember the date, Mr. Walker? What year is it?" I stared at him for a long moment before answering, "It's the year my family mistook patience for weakness." He didn't write that down. After the doctor left, I looked at my reflection in the window. The old man looking back wasn't broken. He was ready. They wanted to erase me. But the thing about ghosts is, we see everything. The next morning, Ethan called a family meeting. But when I arrived, I wasn't prepared for who else was sitting there. Harold, Clara's father, holding a lawyer's briefcase. The living room was tense when I walked in. Ethan sat confidently beside Clara. Linda looked pale. Harold smirked, tapping the lawyer's briefcase like it contained my death sentence. "Dad," Ethan began, "we're worried about you." "Worried," I repeated. "That's a new word for greedy, isn't it?" "Please, let's not do this," Clara said sweetly. "We just think maybe you should let Ethan handle your business affairs from now on. It'll ease your stress." I looked around the room slowly. "My affairs, my house, my company, my chair," I said softly. "It's funny how you people always want what's mine." Harold cleared his throat. "Now, let's be civil. We have legal documents ready." I cut him off. "Legal documents? You mean the ones forged using fake medical evaluations?" Ethan froze. "What are you talking about?" I leaned back in my seat, calm as a priest before confession. "Don't act confused, son. I know everything. Every whisper, every late-night file transfer, every message between you and your wife." Clara's face drained of color. Linda's eyes widened. "You have no proof," Harold said stiffly. I smiled. "Actually, I do." I slid a small flash drive across the table. Security cameras are a wonderful thing, especially when your own family forgets where they are. For a moment, silence. Only the sound of the clock ticking. Then, Ethan's mask cracked. "You're bluffing." "Maybe," I said. "But imagine what happens when those videos go to the press. Respected entrepreneur declared senile by his greedy son and manipulative daughter-in-law. Quite a headline, don't you think?" Harold's smirk vanished. Clara squeezed Ethan's arm. Linda was on the verge of tears. That's when I saw it. Fear. And it was beautiful. "Now," I continued, "if you want peace, you'll stop your little schemes. If not, I'll let the world see what kind of family you really are." Cone, I stood, walking, G toward the door. "Oh, and Ethan," I added softly, "next time you record someone pretending to be weak, make sure you're not being recorded too." Their silence followed me out the door. That night, I poured myself a drink and sat by the fire, watching the flames twist and dance. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. But deep inside, I knew it wasn't over. Fear is only the beginning of control. The next morning, I received a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have crossed me, old man. You have no idea who you're dealing with." It was signed, H. The message from Harold glowed on my phone screen like a curse. "You shouldn't have crossed me, old man. You have no idea who you're dealing with." But he was wrong. I knew exactly who I was dealing with. A man who'd spent decades manipulating people with money and arrogance. A man who saw his daughter as a pawn, his son-in-law as an investment, and me as a stepping stone. I smiled bitterly. "You've finally shown your teeth, Harold," I murmured. "But I still have mine." The next day, I met my lawyer, Mark Feldman, at his downtown office. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You sure you want to go through with this, David? It'll tear your family apart." I sipped my coffee slowly. "Mark, my family did that already. I'm just sweeping up the ashes." I gave him the final set of recordings. Not the full truth, but enough to start the fire. "I want a rumor," I said. "Something that'll make Harold question Ethan. Maybe that Ethan's planning to double-cross him." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Divide and conquer, huh?" "Exactly. Let's make them eat each other before they ever reach me." That night, I played my role. Calm, quiet, predictable. I called Ethan, my tone gentle. "Son," I said, "I've been thinking. Maybe Harold can help manage the property. What do you think?" He hesitated. "You mean, give him access?" I smiled into the phone. "Why not? He's trustworthy, isn't he?" Ethan's silence told me everything. His pride flared instantly, just as I hoped. Meanwhile, Mark spread the rumor. Within 48 hours, Harold heard that Ethan planned to move funds without his approval. The message reached him through one of his trusted friends, who was, of course, on my payroll. The results were delicious. 2 days later, I watched from the study camera as Harold stormed into my living room shouting at Ethan. "You think you can run deals behind my back, you ungrateful brat?" Ethan's voice cracked. "What are you talking about?" Clara tried to calm them both, but their argument turned venomous. Linda stood frozen, unable to pick a side. I sat upstairs, listening through the speakers, the faintest smile touching my lips. Let them fight. Let them destroy each other. For years, I'd been the quiet backbone of this family. Now I was the invisible hand pulling the strings. Still, I knew Harold wasn't done. Men like him don't go down easily. And true enough, later that night, another message arrived. This time, not a threat, but a challenge. "If you want war, David, you'll get one. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. My office." I accepted without hesitation. It was time for the old wolves to meet face to face. When I entered Harold's office the next day, he was already waiting, and beside him sat Ethan holding a signed document. "My company's transfer papers. If you were me, would you walk out or burn it all down? Tell me in the comments and subscribe, because the next chapter gets brutal." Harold's office smelled of leather and smoke. He sat behind his mahogany desk like a king, fingers clasped together. Ethan stood beside him, trying to look confident but unable to meet my eyes. "David," Harold began smoothly, "I think it's time we made things simple. Sign these papers, transfer the company to Ethan, and enjoy your retirement. Peacefully." I glanced at the document. Every page was a lie. Legal manipulation dressed as kindness. I smiled faintly. "And if I refuse?" Harold's eyes hardened. "Then we'll prove you're not mentally stable enough to run it. We already have your medical files ready." My heart pounded once, then steadied. "Ah, yes," I said, "the ones your paid doctor signed." Ethan's expression faltered. "Dad, please. This is for your own good." "For my own good," I repeated. "That's what every traitor says before they steal the crown." I took a slow step forward. "Tell me, Ethan. How much did he promise you?" Ethan stayed silent. Clara wasn't there to guide his lies this time. Harold smirked. "He doesn't need promises. He knows power when he sees it." "Power?" I laughed softly. "You mistake power for paper." Before Harold could respond, I placed my phone on the desk and pressed play. Their own voices filled the room. A recording from a week ago. Harold. "Once we get the company, the old man's nothing." Ethan. "Yeah, I'll make sure he never steps foot in the office again." Ethan's face drained of color. Harold's jaw tightened. "You see," I said quietly, "I learned something over the years. You can't outsmart a man who built his empire by watching snakes bite each other." I turned and began to leave. "You think this recording will scare us?" Harold called after me. I paused at the door. "No," I said. "But the IRS might find it interesting, especially the part about your consulting payments from my company's account." The blood dye rained from Harold's face. "You wouldn't dare." "Oh, I already did," I said calmly. "Consider it my Christmas gift." As I stepped out of the office, I caught Ethan's trembling whisper, "What did you do, Dad?" I didn't look back. "I'm doing what you taught me, son, taking what's mine." Outside, the cold wind cut against my face, sharp and clean. For the first time, I felt alive. But revenge isn't peace. It's gasoline. Once you light it, there's no turning back. That night, I burned the copies of every old family photo that hung on my walls, except one, the picture of us around the Christmas table, the night it all began. As the flames swallowed the last photograph, my phone buzzed with a call from Rachel. Her voice was trembling. "Dad, Clara's missing, and Ethan's blaming you." Rachel's voice shook through the phone. "Dad, Clara's missing. Ethan says she left after an argument, but now he can't find her." For a long time, I said nothing. I just stared out the window at the heavy winter rain, falling like God's tears on a family long past saving. "Where was she last seen?" I finally asked. Ethan answered before Rachel could. He'd barged into my house an hour later, soaked and furious. "You did something to her," he shouted. "I know you did." I didn't flinch. "Sit down, Ethan." "I'm not sitting down. You destroyed everything. My marriage, my reputation, my company." "You destroyed those yourself," I said quietly. He paced the living room like a caged animal. "You're sick. You always needed control, even over us. Well, congratulations. You finally got it." His words didn't sting. I'd lost my capacity for pain days ago. "Ethan," I said softly, "I didn't hurt Clara, but maybe she finally saw you for what you are." He stopped. "What's that supposed to mean?" I leaned forward, lowering my voice. "You think Harold was the only one playing you? She's been seeing someone else for months." He froze. "You're lying. Check her messages." His hands trembled as he pulled out his phone. I watched as realization hit him. Unread messages, hidden calls, late-night photos. I didn't have to fake the sigh that followed. "I warned you about letting snakes in the house. You didn't listen." He stared at me, tears in his eyes. For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. When he finally left, slamming the door so hard the frames rattled, I sank into my chair. The same chair he'd once taken from me. For years, that seat had been a symbol of pride. Now it was a throne of ashes. That night, I sat there watching the fire flicker, thinking of Clara's empty smile, Harold's greed, Linda's silence, and Ethan's rage. Each of them had played their part in this tragedy. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Clara wasn't stupid. Manipulative, yes, but not careless. She wouldn't simply vanish. The next morning, I received a letter. No stamp, no sender, just my name written in neat cursive. Inside was a photograph. Clara, sitting in a car beside Harold. The note read, "You can't beat me, David. You can only lose slower." So she'd run to him. I smiled grimly. Perfect. Because I had one more card to play. One that would burn them both. I called Mark. "It's time," I said. "Release the files to the board. Every payment Harold laundered, every deal Ethan signed under false authorization." Make sure it all lands where it should. Mark hesitated. That'll ruin them. I'm counting on it. As I hung up, I whispered to the empty room, "You took my chair, Ethan. Now I'm taking your future." That evening, the news broke. Harold's company was under federal investigation, and Ethan had been named as a co-conspirator. But the footage released to the press had one unexpected detail: a video showing Clara handing over files to the FBI. The story hit every headline the next morning. Business tycoon Harold James under federal investigation. Family empire collapses amid inheritance scandal. Whistleblower daughter-in-law vanishes after cooperation with FBI. Clara had played everyone, Harold, Ethan, and even me. She'd taken my evidence, twisted it, and handed it over to the FBI in exchange for immunity. The perfect survivor. When I saw Ethan's face on the news, hollow-eyed, handcuffed, led away by federal agents, I didn't feel joy. I didn't even feel victory. Just silence. Linda left soon after. She said she couldn't live in a house built on hatred. I didn't stop her. Maybe she was right. Rachel visited me once after everything fell apart. She sat quietly across from me, her eyes soft but sad. "You got your revenge," she said. "Was it worth it?" I stared at the empty chair across the table. Ethan's chair. The same one that started this war. "I don't know," I admitted. "I thought revenge would feel like justice, but it feels like sitting alone in a crowded room." She reached across the table, touching my hand gently. "You could still fix some of it, Dad. Maybe not the past, but yourself." I smiled faintly. "Some houses aren't built with bricks, Rachel. They're built with forgiveness." I looked around. And sometimes, that's the hardest foundation of all. That night, I poured myself one last drink and sat in my rightful chair, the head of the table. Outside, snow fell silently, covering the world in white. Inside, the ghosts of laughter, betrayal, and lost love whispered through the halls. I raised my glass to the empty seats. "To family," I said quietly. "The one thing you can't buy, and the one thing that can destroy you." The clock ticked past midnight. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Harold's empire falling apart for good. And me? I stayed where it all began. In my chair. The one my son took from me, not knowing it would cost him everything. A week later, I received another letter. This time with no return name, just a single sentence written in Clara's familiar handwriting. "You may have won, but you'll never forget." She was right. Revenge doesn't heal, it brands.